All dimensions are open to me.
What's going on, everybody? Thematics here, and today I wanted to make a video talking a little bit about the new raid trinkets in the 10.2 PTR that I've been able to test, and also some speculation, some theory crafting, and this is all, of course, in regards to Ret Paladin, specifically for Ret Paladin. I got a chance to test the Big 4 Strength DPS raid trinkets, and what you see here on your screen is a complete breakdown of all the damage that I dealt in 10-minute segments, right, for each trinket. So everybody, editing thematics here. So actually, there's a little error here that I noticed while I was doing the editing for this video. The Farok trinket damage done shows like the DPS shows 266k, which is consistent with what I had for the overall, but the damage done actually shows 106.77 million. That's incorrect. That's because when I screenshotted this, I forgot to change it to overall. Like, details is kind of weird like that. So even though the DPS is consistent on the overall, the damage done is actually lower than it should be. It's showing as lower than it should be. What I actually did was 156.77 million, which if you look at the others, that makes more sense, right? So yeah, just wanted to throw that in there, just to clear up any confusion. This was 10 minutes of straight, raw DPS, cooldowns on cooldown constantly, right? Making sure to try to utilize things within their, within the most desirable windows possible. And actually, there's a fairly decent disparity between the results that I got here. Now, there's going to be some variation due to things like, the proccing of my, which I probably should have removed, my my call, Neltharian's Call trinket that you see here that I got, Neltharian's Call to Chaos, right? Although I think it's got a fairly consistent proc rate, so maybe not that big of a deal. And you see, we get into it right here. The Augury of the Primal Flame was the first one I tested. Now, this got a bunch of critical strike, and it makes your spells and abilities have a low chance. There's that low chance, right, to grant Annihilating Flame for 30 seconds, causing your critical strikes to deal 30% additional damage as fire split between nearby enemies. The flame fades after dealing a certain amount of damage. It's 215,000, right about, and damage and total limit will be increased per enemy struck. Now, that being said, if we're talking about up to 5 enemies struck, I can't imagine it being more than 100%. I think that most of this stuff is like 20% per additional enemy. So you're looking at maybe 430,000 total damage that you're going to be dealing. But if you actually look at the total damage that it dealt, Annihilating Flame actually dealt 5 million damage. It was 3.1% of my overall for that 10-minute segment that I used it in. Now, interesting thing about this gets significantly better, I think, with crit, because you get to consume the proc faster, right? Thereby potentially giving you more procs overall. I don't know if that's exactly how that works, but I only had 19% crit baseline when using this trinket, and with wings, of course, you get the 39% because you get the additional 20% crit chance on your abilities. So yeah, I mean, if you have higher crit, I would assume that this trinket is going to have a lot more value. Now, as it currently stands, our Hammer of Wrath is a guaranteed crit, but our Hammer of Wrath is going to go down in value because when we lose this 4-piece tier set that we currently have, the Heartfire Sentinels set, our Hammer of Wrath is no longer going to deal cleave damage. It's no longer going to deal 20% damage to 4 additional targets. So we're actually losing that, and pretty much, I mean, Ret Paladins and like similar to Outlaw Rogues, we are the Quintet Cleave Kings, right? I like to say, because we hit 5 targets and we smash 5 targets, and anything beyond 5 targets is like, because even though our Divine Storm hits everything, and our Divine Storm will hit, it will still deal reduced damage beyond 5 targets. Wake of Ashes and Blade of Justice, when talented into, that is going to hit everything, right? So in Mythic Plus, our really good pull numbers are like 5 to 7 targets, kind of. But unfortunately, the higher you climb in keys, when you get to 24, 25, 26, 27, you're going to start having to pull like massive amounts of the dungeon at a time. So it kind of gets, slightly worse as it goes along. Divine Storm is and Wake of Ashes, Blade of Justice are really the only things that are getting like good amount of value in those gigantic pulls, right? Because your Judgment, your Crusading Strikes, and currently your Hammer of Wrath and your Divine Toll will never hit more than 5 targets at a time. So this kind of goes along with that 5 target cleave thing, all right, this trinket. It was pretty nice. I did 266k overall. I managed to maintain that for 10 minutes straight. I think I peaked at like 389, I think it was, and then it slowly dropped down and dropped down and dropped down. It kind of stabilized around 265, 266k, right? This is pretty much where I ended. Now, if you look, of course, the expurgation dot is dealing significantly more damage than it currently does, just because of the new tier set giving you that that additional expurgation dot damage and duration. And because I'm actually using the double judgment talent, right, the 2 charges of judgment, rather than the 2 charges of Blade of Justice, because with the increased duration on expurgation, you don't really need to worry about the dot falling off before you get to refresh it. Also, you have Art of War, you know, you're going to get those procs of Blade of Justice anyway, so I actually use the 2 Holy Power Blade of Justice, right? You see the expurgation dot is massive and Judgment's damage is a lot higher. Interesting little tidbit also for this, I'm using the Divine Arbiter talent, because it does increase the damage of my Judgment, of my Crusading Strikes, and of my Hammer of Wrath, even though it's pretty low down there, because with the lack of this current tier set, right, that's what's going to happen to Hammer of Wrath. You can see it's number 10 on the list. But you're going to want to use Judgment a lot more. You didn't really have to with this tier set, because this tier set causes Hammer of Wrath to apply the Judgment effect. Meaning, during Wings, or whenever you see a target that's at 20% or less health, boom, you want to hit that Hammer of Wrath, because it's going to cleave a little bit and it's going to apply the Judgment effect, and it's going to be a guaranteed crit. So right. Hammer of Wrath used to be much higher on the chart. Now it's going to just fall off a cliff pretty much, because you're only going to get the 1 single target Hammer of Wrath. So it's not going to be priority anymore. Now you want to weave in as many Judgments as possible every time you get a chance to Judgment before you use Divine Storm or Final Verdict or Templar's Verdict, whatever you're using. You want to make sure you're not wasting the Judgments from your Divine Toll. You know, the passive. Well, I play with the passive Judgments. I don't play with the reduced cooldown. I play with the passive Judgments every 5 seconds after you use Divine Toll. And you actually want to make sure that you maximize efficiency when it comes to using that. You want to really utilize all those free Judgments. Make sure they get woven in, and you're not wasting any Holy Power right before you hit one of your Holy Power spenders. But anyway, I did 5 million overall in 10 minutes. You know, that's fairly decent. You got to figure in a 20-minute dungeon, you're probably 22 minutes, 25 minutes maybe you spend in there. You spend enough time in combat, you're probably getting this to around 12 million damage. It might end up being about 4% of your overall, which is not terribly, like, you know, it's not awful, right? It's pretty good. You see, you move on to the Infernal Signet brand that I have over to the right of that. And this one I actually did significantly less. I did 12k less overall in the same time window, the same time frame. You see the damage breakdown looks very similar. Hammer of Wrath is only slightly higher because there were other people hitting the target dummy during this this window here. You know, the dummies got dropped below 20%, so I was able to use the Hammer of Wrath. But, you know, again, you're not getting the cleaves because you're not using the old tier set. Yeah, Hammer of Wrath slightly higher here, but still doesn't really make a dent. It doesn't reach the top 5 even. That's how bad it's going to get. Interesting thing, you look at Wrathful Sanction, right? Wrathful Sanction does a fairly decent amount of damage. The tier set itself is going to also be like, you know, 4% of your overall as far as just the Wrathful Sanction goes, like anywhere between 4 and 5%, I'm guessing. Now, you look at the Vicious Brand dot, right? That's the Infernal Signet brand's effect there, the passive effect. Your attacks and abilities have a chance to viciously brand your target, dealing, let's say, about 12,000 fire damage over 6 seconds, and grant you Fire Starter, stacking up to 15 times. Damage increased per stack to a maximum of 152,000. So this is basically like your Elementium Pocket Anvil, pretty much, that I currently have. Or it's actually more similar, I want to say, to the Shadow Flame embellishments. If you're using them, you kind of get a similar effect, because it also, while you're above 5 stacks, also deals 50% of its damage to you, which didn't really feel all that dangerous. I'm going to be honest. I'm not even using Fading Light, and I wasn't using Fading Light during the testing here. I was actually using, what is it, Seal of Order? I forget the names of these things sometimes. Yeah, Seal of Order. So You know, I wasn't even using that for absorbs, and I didn't really feel like I was ever at risk of dying. Like, the backlash damage didn't really feel that powerful or that impactful. So I think you're pretty safe using it. Maybe in certain fights in Mythic Plus, you might get yourself clapped. You know what I mean? If you're not careful. But yeah, so I have 15 stacks. Enemies near your target start to suffer 10% of the damage that you deal. 10% of the damage you're dealing to the primary target with this is getting split. So it's not going to be that much damage. And very similar to the Elementium Pocket Anvil, it does decay out of combat. Pocket Anvil really just kind of counted down out of combat. It didn't really decay. Like, you didn't lose stacks of it. It was hard enough to keep up as it was. You know, some dungeons you just weren't able to do that because you had to mount up and run. And 15 seconds is just not enough time to keep that thing active sometimes. Freehold was probably the best dungeon for Pocket Anvil because you could cheat and use the target dummies to keep the anvil going while you're waiting for the RP in the ring. You know, so yeah, this decays every 5 seconds while out of combat and fades entirely after 15 seconds. You have a 15-second timer similar to Elementium Pocket Anvil to be able to get this going again. Now, that's going to make it harder to use in Mythic Plus. Still not the worst one we tried, but I gotta say I'm not that impressed. If you look at the actual amount of damage that it did, the Vicious Brand Dot did 3.8 million, so 2.5% of the overall. So not terribly worse, but still worse. 1.2 million damage less overall in 10 minutes than the Augury of Primal Flame, right? So, I mean, right now this is, as you can see, I put the arrows to show you basically which were the best two. Yeah, this one is the second best, actually, seemingly, right? Maybe with more crit might be the best. All right, now we move on to the worst one of the bunch. I mean, and when I say worst, this was actually the worst, and you'll see what I mean in a little bit. But so this gives you primary stat baseline. Summon 6 roots for the on-use to draw on their power for 15 seconds, slowing you by 10 seconds per root. Your next 6 melee abilities each sever a root, dealing 105,000 additional Shadow Flame damage split between nearby enemies. Damage increased per enemy struck, up to 5. So there's that up to 5. Increasing, this is like a common theme now running with Blizzard. I guess they just want to run with this from now on, like up to 5 increasing damage for these trinkets, which is fine. But this trinket does have a significantly long cooldown. 2 minutes and 30 seconds is like, right? For the benefit that it's giving you, it's really not that powerful. If you actually look at the overall here, right? Again, similar overall breakdown. Wrathful Sanction a little bit higher on this one, but now you look down at Severed Embers, which is the trinket, and the trinket only did 2.76 million damage. So like let's say, you know, 2 3/4 of a million. Like it's so bad. It's so bad, guys. And you might be thinking, well, you know, as a Ret Paladin, you can kind of circumvent the slowing effect using Blessing of Freedom, right? Negative. Blessing of Freedom does not work on this trinket at all, which is, I mean, it's kind of good because, like, if you freedom yourself, you don't, you know, while you have the trinket active, you don't actually break the roots and like, you know, delete the on use of the trinket. Basically, you don't get to do that. So the trinket does override the Blessing of Freedom. I've tested it. Whether you use it whether you use Blessing of Freedom before or after, like it won't immune you either if you use it before. So like it's not like the trinket just won't work, which is both a positive and negative thing, because, you know, if you get slowed by that much in a Mythic Plus, you know, you might get clapped by a swirly, something you might not be able to move out of in time, and Freedom will not save you. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, significantly less damage than the rest of them. You see the overall was 248k. 248k overall. That's oof, that is 18k lower. My God, that is really bad. So definitely stay away from this trinket. You know, the other one at least was like slightly better. It was like the 250s, right? So it's like a little bit closer. But this one's gonna be a no for me. And now we move on to the last of the big four. This one is the Pip's Emerald Friendship Badge. Now this one starts with Pip, right? Pip is a little, from what I understand from using, I saw when I equipped the trinket, was this little like Fey dragon, right? So it gives you strength baseline, primary stat baseline. Now you see that this trinket in the same time frame actually did significantly more, or we did significantly more damage with the Emerald Friendship Badge as opposed to the Primal Flame. Now, I think this has more to do with the fact that it gives primary stat and then it gives you an absurd amount of secondary. Could be crit, could be mastery, could be versatility, and either one of those is pretty good for Ret Paladin, to be honest. A lot of people say, oh, mastery is so bad, you don't want mastery. But in reality, the only reason you choose verse over mastery is because verse also gives you defense, right? It gives you defense, it gives you healing. But getting additional mastery just like extra out of nowhere is not a bad thing. It gives you pretty much the same. It's like the same pound for pound as versatility for damage output, right? So this says join the dream team, which I love. Gaining 266 of Pip's mastery, Urktos's versatility, or Erwin's critical strike based on your current best friend. Your spells and abilities have a chance to tag in the next best friend, granting you their passive bonus and empowering it to almost 3,200, let's say, for 12 seconds, right? Now, that's a significant amount of versatility or mastery to get for 12 seconds. Crit is also pretty good, but it's actually, I want to say it's probably slightly less valuable, unless maybe you're combining these two trinkets and you get the proc at the same time that you get the other proc. That would be nuts. That would be actually pretty nutty. But the important thing to look here is not the damage breakdown, which is why I didn't post that. But I mean, I did do, you see, it's 271k overall. That's still a little bit more. That's you know, what, 5k more than what I did with the Primal Flame trinket. But the important thing to note is the buff uptime breakdown. Now, if you look at the buff up times there, you can see it starts with Pip, right? But for whatever reason, Best Friends with Pip is actually the lowest one on the chart. Now, it's gonna add up to 100% because it basically just juggles between them, and then when it switches initially is when it gives you the 12-second buff. But you have a buff, one of the three buffs, you'll have them pretty much 100% uptime, right? On a mixture basically of the three. Pip was the lowest one, oddly enough, even though that's the one you start with. You would think that I don't really know how it works. I'm not gonna pretend to know. But yeah, you see Best Friends with Erwin, which is the one who gives you critical strike, and that one's actually second highest with 33% uptime. And the one that gives you versatility, Best Friends with Urktos. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. He's the one that gives you versatility, and that one had the highest uptime there. So this could be completely random. It could be kind of like a Harlan's Loaded thing, right? But yeah, man, 43.9% uptime on just the versatility. Even though, you know, you obviously don't have that uptime on the 3,200 verse from that, but you do have this more often, meaning you got more I got more procs here of the versatility bonus for 3,200 than I did for anything else, which is probably what contributed also to the higher damage output overall at the end of the 10 minutes. So this trinket, you know, it looks better, but I guess it could be worse depending on the stat distribution, right? Like how often you have which proc. Like it's kind of a toss up, but I still like this trinket because I feel like even with some of the things reversed, swapped around, like if the mastery is the highest, it's going to be a similar result, right? Because that still gives you more damage. If the crit is higher, you might get slightly less overall there, but I can't imagine it would be more than 5k. So at worst, it like ties the Farok trinket, and at best, it like outclasses it. Not by that much. Now, I wouldn't say completely outclasses it, but it does better. Right. Now, the next two trinkets, so one of them I actually didn't get a chance to test. I said the others were the big four because I don't think that this one is going to be very good. Now, I didn't not test it because I just didn't think it was good. I didn't test it because I didn't see it available to be tested yet. I don't know where to get it. I actually went to the vendor, scrolled through all the pages, did not see this trinket, the Ashes of the Embersole, right? So unfortunately couldn't test that one yet, but I just can't see this trinket being very good. I mean, when you actually look at this trinket and what it does, I mean, it gives you haste baseline, which is, yes, nice. You know, 700 haste is like a significant amount. Oh, interesting side note. I actually, on the PTR, I only switched to 4 pieces of gear, the 4 tier pieces, and I can't imagine they gave me that much more haste I'm pretty sure they did, in fact, but for some reason, I actually had more haste. So I don't know if we're getting better haste scaling in 10.2 as Ret. But yeah, I actually had like 6% more haste than I currently do. So I'm now at 30% haste. I was sitting at like 36% haste on the PTR, right? And that's without like fully upgraded everything. So I mean, the haste could be kind of outrageous, right? And adding this to it might be nice. But then you look at the on use, right? I mean, it's got a similar on use to the Iridius fragment, and it's got a lower cooldown, which is nice, 2-minute cooldown. It says draw power from the remnants of the embersole, gaining 4,800 strength. This is not even fully upgraded, but 4,800 strength for 20 seconds, decaying every 3 seconds. So you get that decay in. It's not every ability, but the decay is every 3 seconds and 20 seconds. So, I mean, you got to figure probably in about the first 9 seconds, it's going to drop to probably about half of what it starts out as. And that doesn't really feel too great. And for a 2-minute on use, and then on top of that, once the effect ends, it says become burned out, losing 694. So you basically just lose all the haste that you would get passively from this trinket when the on use runs out. That sucks, because that means for an entire minute, for 60 seconds before recovering, for an entire minute, this trinket is completely worthless to you. Having it equipped means nothing. You literally just lose all benefits for the trinket for a minute after using it every 2 minutes. I mean, if you think about it, right? If you're losing all value from this trinket, like a third of the time, so if you're in a dungeon, let's say for 30 minutes, right? That means you have 10 minutes where this trinket is doing absolutely nothing for you. Like, obviously that's a bit, overblown. Like, it's not going to be that much time, but it's going to be somewhere around there, 6, 7, 8 minutes in the dungeon where this thing is just completely worthless to you. That doesn't feel great, man. That doesn't feel great. So now, funnily enough, I did test a non-DPS trinket because I thought it was interesting, and I just wanted to see. I was curious to see what it would do. The Tainted Rage Heart, right, is a tank trinket. As you can see, right, the equip is deal 1,800 Shadow Flame damage to you and nearby enemies every 3 seconds while in combat. Now the use is given to the Rage Heart, absorbing, which is why this is a tank trinket, absorbing 316,000 damage, but suffering 27,000 damage, let's say, Shadow Flame damage, which is nothing, and lashing out at nearby enemies every 1 second to deal 26,000 Shadow Flame damage split between nearby enemies. Now, the damage increase is also, damage is increased by each enemy struck up to 5, okay, like all these other trinkets. It has a 2-minute cooldown, and funnily enough, this trinket actually did slightly more than the worst trinket on the list, right? Barely more, but just enough to matter. All right, so it actually did 3.25 million damage, which was 2% of the overall. And what's crazy about this is, and I can't wrap my brain around why this is, but this was the highest DPS that we did within the same time, when the 10-minute time window, right? It was 280k. I'm looking at the damage breakdown. It looks pretty much the same. I do not understand why, because this trinket did not do as much damage as the Farok trinket. It didn't even do, I think, as much damage as that other trinket that's more, like I said, would be more for single target. I forget the name of it offhand. But for some reason, the overall was just better. I don't know if we got better procs of stuff. Maybe there were more procs of Blade of Justice in this in a particular test. But my God, that is a significant amount more than the highest trinket that we had, and it's not even a DPS trinket. That's kind of funny. I just thought I'd throw that in there. So is this good? I mean, if your tanks don't want it because they already have it, and you feel like rolling on it and testing it just for funsies, it might be kind of funny to use in Mythic Plus, because it also does absorb like an ass load of damage, and it might help you. I don't know. I don't think this is going to be good for DPS. I don't think this is optimal for DPS, don't get me wrong. But it was just kind of funny that this test turned out this way. And I honestly thought it would be terrible, and it just wasn't. It was, wow. So now, all that being said, right, we have some other trinkets. The Mythic Plus dungeons for Season 3 were announced. This is the wrong window. So we're going to not get any Dragonflight dungeons in the next rotation. We're actually getting two BFA dungeons, which one of them is not King's Rest, sorry, Atal Dazar, right? So if you look at the loot for Atal Dazar here, let's do all slots, Retribution, right? As far as trinkets go, you got Razan's Gleaming Eye, which it's a passive trinket. I like passive trinkets. Your attacks have a chance to grant you, X amount of haste. It's going to be much higher than this, obviously, because it's just showing the back in BFA stats, right? But yeah, you get a bunch of haste for 15 seconds. Now, this was super good for Ret back in the day. I don't know with the changes if it's going to be good now, even with Crusading Strikes build. I mean, getting that additional haste is nice. That's the reason that I use the Frostfire crafted legs, because in Mythic Plus, every pack that you pull, boom, you get it's like 1600 haste. It's pretty nasty, right? So I'm not sure how much haste is going to grant you on proc or how often it's going to proc, but this actually could be a decent trinket to think about running. The other dungeon that we're getting is Waycrest Manor. Now, Waycrest Manor, the trinket here that you get is the opposite of the one in Atal Dazar. Essentially, your attacks have a chance to grant you critical strike instead of haste. Now, this trinket, I mean, getting additional crit on proc again is not like Ret is not a spec anymore that scales specifically super high with any stat. Like, all of our stats have to kind of be balanced a little bit, because we don't scale massively high with mastery like feral druids and demon hunters and fury warriors anymore. We used to, haste mastery was our thing. Like, you just poured everything you had into haste mastery. You didn't even take regular avenging wrath. You took crusade back then, and that was that. But now it's a lot different. So is this gonna be better than the Razan's Gleaming Eye? I don't know, or better than any of the other trinkets. These two are like toss-ups. Definitely ones to pick up if, like, let's say nobody else in your group needs them that badly. You can maybe if you get these trinkets, you hold on to them and you test them out. You run them through the sim or whatever you're gonna do. Maybe they'll be good. We're also getting the Everbloom, but I mean, as you can see, this is just a worse Razan's Eye, pretty much. I mean, I think this might proc slightly more than Razan's Eye, but I don't think enough to be worth it. And you get haste for less amount of time. You get basically 10 seconds worth of haste rather than 15. I don't know if you're going to get more of the stat, but this seems to be strictly a worse Razan's Gleaming Eye. So I probably, depending on how this turns out, I probably wouldn't even bother with this trinket. We're getting a dungeon from Cataclysm, Throne of the Tides now for the first time ever. And this one is interesting because you do get this trinket here that gives you critical strike and increases your strength on use, right, on a 1 minute 30-second cooldown. This is kind of like a reverse overwhelming power crystal. If you guys played in Shadowlands, Ret Shadowlands, you remember the overwhelming power crystal from the other side, right? And it gave you strength baseline, primary stat baseline, but then it gave you crit on use, and it had a 1.5 minute cooldown. However, it also did damage to you. This doesn't do that, but it does the reverse. It gives you crit baseline and strength on use. So this could actually be good. This could be a trinket to watch out for and maybe to pick up. All right, moving on here. We're getting 2 Legion dungeons in the Mythic Plus rotation. Now, this one, Nightmarish Eggshell, your melee attacks have a chance to grant you haste. There's a lot of, like, haste proc trinkets for strength users, and this is also for agi users as well. But yeah, it's for melee strictly. I don't really know who would use this besides Ret or Warrior, maybe Enhancement Shaman. I don't know. But yeah, so your melee attacks have a chance to grant you haste every 1 second, escalating, right, climbing for 20 seconds total. Basically, once the 20 seconds up, you lose the haste. You get you probably peak. I think it's like at 17 or 18 seconds. I don't really feel like this is going to be a great trinket. I mean, prove me wrong, right? But I don't think so. And the last dungeon that we're getting for older expansions is Blackrook Hold, where you get this little trinket, Spiked Counterweight. This is a trinket that is highly sought after. Every time this is a Mythic Plus, this trinket is the trinket to get from here. It gives you haste baseline. Your melee attacks have a chance to deal additional physical damage and increase all damage the target takes from you by 15% for 15 seconds, up to a certain amount. It's a set amount extra. This could be good for Ret Paladin. I see this being better for, like, Rogue Warrior, maybe Enhanced Chamois as well. I don't really see this being all that amazing for Ret Paladin. Could be wrong, but I feel like this time around there are actually just better trinkets to choose from. So who knows? If I get lucky enough to get this, I might hold on to it just in case, Simit, whatever. And of course, the last dungeon we're getting in the rotation is what's going to be split into two. Is going to be the new mega dungeon, Dawn of the Infinite, right? This one, there's like this trinket. I've tried it. No bueno. It's no good, right? I don't like this trinket very much. This trinket would be the trinket to get, right? If you can get a hold of this trinket at max item level, I think this will probably give you, with stat increases, somewhere around 3,500 of your highest secondary stat, which for Ret Paladin should be verse. It's mine is verse. That's an insane amount to get. Now it does have a 3-minute cooldown, but when you can tie this into your big burst windows on bigger pulls and stuff like that, where you you don't shine as much as, like, let's say an an unholy DK or something like that, you can actually do a ton of damage. I recall using in a few pulls Iridius fragment, right, from Halls of Infusion, because I managed to get that at just 441 item level, not the max 447, but with Lust Pop and everything, with an Evoker, Augvoker in the group, I was doing over $1 million. I was doing like 1.4 million at one point I peaked at on a big pull. So I would assume that this will have a similar effect, except this, unlike the Iridius Fragment, does not decay. So you're getting the primary stat all the time baseline, which is really nice, and you're getting the massive burst of versatility here for the full 20 seconds, no decay involved. That means you're going to be able to hold that DPS for longer. So I think this is going to be one of the trinkets to get. This is going to be one of the ones that I am going to go after, like really try and grind this out. It's going to be hard. I don't like that dungeon very much. I mean, it's a fine. I like the dungeon aesthetically. It's awesome. Great dungeon. Just the bosses are a real pain in the ass. All right, and because I don't want this video to go on for an hour, let's kind of wrap it up here with the talents, right? A little bit of speculation and theory crafting for talents. Now, like I said, I think this is just a talent build that I was testing out, but mostly when you see Rets playing right now, you see this is probably the talent build that you see. Oh, I actually just lost a bunch of points there. Do that, right? This is generally the Crusading Strikes build, except, what is it? I think they have, some people take 2 charges of Judgment, other people take 1, and they take the 2 charges of Blade of Justice instead, and then they take the 2 Holy Power Judgments. You know, this is kind of like, you know, you can take either or, really. But I think in the upcoming patch, in the next season, you're going to want to take the 2 charges of Judgment and the 2 Holy Power Blade of Justice, Holy Blade, because Judgment's just going to have way more value. Now, that begs the question, right? Judgment is going to be at the top of the value list, pretty much. I don't actually know, even if we are still taking Vengeful Wrath here, I still don't really know if this is going to necessarily be worth it. It might be just for that extra holy power generation, but from what I saw, or what I felt when I was playing, when I was playtesting those trinkets and stuff like that on the target dummies, I didn't actually feel like I was starved for holy power ever. Getting multiple procs of the 2 holy power Blade of Justice seemed sufficient. There were times that, you know, this came into play and I was like, oh, cool, I get the extra holy power. Now I can actually use the holy power spender instead of having to wait on an ability to cool down. So this might still end up being worth taking. I don't ever think you take Sanctify, so that would beg the question, like, what would you replace this with, if you even replace this? I don't see Judgment of Justice being all that great, at least not all the time, just because of the fact that this sucks on Sanguine Week, right? Like, Sanguine Week, this is, your group will literally just baby rage at you if you take this on Sanguine Week, because you're going to be perma-slowing the ads. Not a good idea on Sanguine Week, right? But maybe other weeks? I don't know. Could this be a replacement for this now that Hammer of Wrath is going to just be like, it's going to drop so low on the charts? Maybe. I guess there would also, if you can build enough crit, be an argument for taking Heart of the Crusader. So okay, my build might look a little something. Let's see. Okay, so we're using that. We're using 2 Holy Power. Still using Final Verdict because it's just better. Definitely still using the projected Divine Storm. Tempest of the Lightbringer here. So neither one of these is really all that great. Would not use either of these as a replacement for this in Mythic Plus. So, but we're losing so much damage from Hammer of Wrath. We're losing the cleave. We're losing the priority for the judgment effect that it applies. So like even during wings, you're not really, I found myself not really wanting to press Hammer of Wrath that much, because every time judgment was up and I had 2 or more holy power, I was like, unless it was holy power capped, which I don't use anything, I just use the holy power spender, but you know, I felt like I wanted the judgment. If I was capped on holy power, it was Divine Storm, then Judgment, then another Divine Storm. Like it just, you want to press Judgment so much more often now, especially as long as your expurgation is on the target. You most definitely want to press Judgment to get that additional damage from the tier set bonus. So yeah, I mean, I don't see this actually being that useful. I could be wrong, just because of the extra holy power generation is still nice, but it's only going to do that on 20% targets that are 20% health or less. So this might still be really good in raid for the execute phases, but I just don't see it being all that great anymore in Mythic Plus. So still want to take the consecration, auto consecration, right, for Blade of Justice. Crusading Strikes, if you're using that build, take the 2 charges of judgment. Now, okay, this is where it's going to start to get interesting, right? Because we need 2 more points here to drop down. So being that we don't have 2 charges of Blade of Justice now, do we still want to use this? It still does increase Final Verdict damage as well. And it increases the range of both of them to 20 yards, which can be really good if you happen to have to run out. So if there's a lot of running out, man, I can't even remember if there's that much running out in these dungeons that are coming up. I feel like there's not that much that would actually put you more than 12 yards away from your target. I might be wrong, but I don't feel like it's going to be nearly as much as the Dragonflight dungeons, right? So maybe this is worth not taking, but you don't really want to take High Lord's Judgment either, because you'll get, you know, even if you put 1 point into this, it will put 2 stacks on the targets that get hit with Judgment. And you don't really want to do that, because you want to press Judgment as often as you can. So you'll just be kind of like wasting the stacks of this. Would it ever be worth taking Judge, Jury, and Executioner? That's a good question. Man, that is a really good question. I think it might be. It's actually worth testing. When you get the tier set, though, I probably wouldn't change any of this until I get the tier set, obviously, to replace the current one. But this kind of build might actually just be worth testing. Additional damage on Judgment, additional crit on Judgment. You still want to take this, especially because with the tier set now, it increases the damage of expurgation, so you definitely want this. Obviously, you have to take this to get to Wake of Ashes, the Truth's Wake, because you take Penitence, Final Wreck, Adjudication, Blades of Light. Now you have the 1 point left. Now, do you put it into Seething Flames, or do you put it into Divine? I think you put it into Divine Arbiter, because this makes your Judgment and your Crusading Strikes and your Final Verdict, I guess, deal, which is less significant, but it makes them deal Holy Strike damage, and this is going to increase the damage of your Holy Strike abilities by 5%. This would mean you have to weave in Final Verdicts every so often when you get to 25 stacks, so as to not waste this talent completely. I think it might be worth it, though. I think it might be worth it. I don't think this side of the tree ever changes with the next tier set bonus, though. I feel like this side of the tree in most dungeons, okay. think in most dungeons, your tree looks like this, right? For the left side. Yeah, so I think that this is gonna be a pretty good build. Oh, I actually everything swapped back because I forgot to do that. Okay, so here, hold on. Let's change that around. Put that there. Take this out of there. Put it there. Take this out of there. Put it there. And then, yeah. I think maybe for every week but Sanguine Week, this might be a good build. But I think that on Sanguine Week, you have to swap this out for either this or this. Probably just this. Right? That's what makes the most sense to me anyway. Well, anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do like and subscribe. And I'm actually currently 3258 IO. I'm going to be going for 3K as Prot. I just started really playing Prot this patch, this season. And I'm going to try to push. I'm already at 28 something, 2870 something, I think. I'm going to try to push to 3K as Prot. I'm going to be posting some videos about that. And I'm also going to try to push as high as I can as Holy, which I haven't played since Cataclysm, but I figure this is as good a time as any at the end of the season to at least try and learn it, so going into the next season I can play it a little bit more as well, even though my main spec will always be Retribution. I love Retribution, but yeah, so please do check those videos out if you get a chance. They'll be getting posted shortly after this one, and yeah, that's it. I'll catch you in the next one.
The battle for my world just started, I've been waiting.